Hello and welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. My guest today is Sally Lotz. Thanks to Dave Hauser, a past guest, for introducing us. Welcome to the show, Sally.
Thank you.
I always start out with the question of what were the values and beliefs that you were raised with that contributed to you becoming who you became as a young adult and who you are today?
Oh boy. That's a loaded question.
Yes, it is.
Because we're going to find out about that. I grew up in a very strict household with a lot of rules, but I've never been a rule breaker. So I kind of think that's inbred in me. So I don't want to give too much away.
No, I mean, we're here to talk about it. There's nothing there. It's all going to come out. So you could start at the beginning, but what were, so what were some of the rules, and you just accepted them?
The rules were basically every decision and choice in my life was decided for me. I had no choices. So that included my clothing, to my books, to my TV shows, to what I did on Saturday morning. So for me, not being a rule breaker, it was very difficult to live that life where every choice was made for me. Now as an adult, I feel like I'm a balanced adult because I don't have those kind of stringent rules. But so I feel comfortable how I live now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I do have some strong values that I'll never swerve away from. I'll never, I'm non-judgmental of other people and their choices. I never told my kids what they needed to believe and what they needed to do when they grew up. I let them make those choices themselves. So,
yeah. So share a little bit more, because I know how you grew up, but share with the audience how you grew up and why those rules were imposed the way they were.
I'm a writer, so I like to leave a little suspense. I like to go
yeah.
So I'm leaving that little suspense there. So when I was 6, my mom converted to becoming a Jehovah's Witness. And also at the same time, she had just gotten divorced, and she was now living with this man who will later become an integral part in my life in a bad way. But the cult shifted my life from being this kid who could play outside and go and do things and have fun and watch whatever she wanted on TV, eat what she wanted, do whatever, but, within the realms of,
Sure,
still having a parental control and siblings, family, friends. I'm going to go out that far. 2, school. You can't talk to anybody at school. Saturdays we're going door to door, and you have to go knocking on doors. No more birthday, no more Christmas, no holidays, no Halloween, no Mother's Day, nothing. Also, you must dress this way. You can't wear what you want to wear. No jeans. You have to wear dresses, and you have to wear this and that. And my hair was decided upon. Every choice was picked for me because it was a form of control to keep me conformed to that cult. If I started thinking outside those bounds,
you might reject what they were teaching.
Yeah.
Okay, so many questions. First of all, this man was in the Jehovah's Witness. That's why your mom joined?
No, he was not. They were living together. And I'll say that I was child number 5. This was my mom's 3rd man in her life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How many siblings? So you have 5. Were there more
7.
After you? 7 now.
There's 8 of us all together. So I have 7 siblings. Yeah.
Okay. So there were four other siblings when she went into the cult.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And what happened with your father?
My father,
was he still part of your life?
He was and he wasn't. My parents got divorced when I was like 3 or 4. I was very young. My mom sent my brothers to live with their dad. So it was just me and my older sister. And we're only about a year apart. We have different
Okay.
dads. Okay.
Okay.
And this was in the 60s. So this was not a
Yeah.
good situation, right? My father was in the Navy. He was deployed. It was Vietnam. So he was not home. He was not around, not by
Mm.
his choice. Back then, mom's taking care of the kids, and he was in the military. So my dad was not part of my life other than letters and presents from foreign countries.
Okay. All right. Okay. So she hooks up with this guy and she joins the cult.
Yes, she joins the cult. We had just moved to a new town. We moved to Chicago, actually. And our neighbor lady came over and was talking to my mom. And, she could see she's got little kids in the house, you know. And I don't know how the conversation went because I was very young, but I
Right.
do know that she was told that she was going to see her mother again. If she wanted to see her mother again, there was a way she could do it. Now, my mom's mom happened to pass away when my mom was really young. She was like 6. And so this cult lady kind of like said, "Oh, you've got little children here. Wouldn't you like to see your mother again in paradise? That could be your life."
Mm.
And so my mom she
Yeah.
went from this life of how much she had messed up with different men and having kids and having no parents to, "Oh, this sounds great."
Yeah. Now instant family, like
Instant family.
a community that would take care of her.
Yes, and this lady love bombed us. She did. She was our next door neighbor, and she would come over with stuff, cookies. She'd bring her teenage daughter over. They brought me books and Barbie dolls that were no longer wanted, and so like we had all this stuff now all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And you mentioned that you were like told how to dress. Were you in public school?
Yes. Hmm.
So you went to public school and you had to wear what they told you to wear and not talk to any of the other kids.
Yeah. I had to wear what my now I not all of Jehovah's Witnesses are as strict as my mom, but most of them have a code of dress that needs to be very modest.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, this is your clothes, that's what you're wearing. You don't get
Mm-hmm.
any choices,
Got it.
especially when you go to the Kingdom Hall or you're going out in service, which is the door to door work they do. You have to be dressed specifically to honor Jehovah. That's what they
Got it.
say.
Okay. So how long did that go on before you, obviously, because you're not in it anymore, what
No,
transpired in between that, joining it and you leaving it?
leaving.
And
Well,
what inspired you to leave?
I figured out really early on, within the first year, that this was a bunch of bull crap because I had to hear my mom tell, at this time, she was still, it was in the process of converting. So I had some friends at school, and this little boy, Paul, his mom called me up and said, "Hey, can Sally come to Paul's birthday?" My mom reamed this lady. "No, she doesn't do birthdays. We're Jehovah's Witnesses. We don't celebrate birthdays. The birthdays are of the devil." And I sat there and I just shrunk. I was like, you had to like talk to her that way. And that's like, now I'm going to be like the outcast,
Right.
like I'm
Oh
the
my
only one not
gosh.
going to the birthday party, you know? So that was like my first experience of like, is this what it's going to be like? The, Jehovah hates birthdays. I mean, birthdays are fun, right? And then Christmas rolled around and it was like, no, no Christmas. Um, and then even when she told me, "Hey, we're going to go to the Kingdom Hall today," because it takes a while. They just don't let you go. It probably takes 6 months to a year. And I was excited because I thought, oh, we get to go to church. And I'm picturing this, little gloves. That's back when you wear gloves and
Uh-huh.
hats and, music and stained glass and just like,
No, that's not what it was.
it was a cinder block building with bars on the front, and it was one big room with folding chairs. And I was like, wow, disappointment, for a 6-year-old. Um, but yeah, all those things kind of like set the stage for me of this isn't right. I had an experience. I don't know if I told you about my butterfly experience, um, where I found a dead butterfly out in the park, and I tested Jehovah, because Jehovah doesn't believe in heaven. Jehovah believes when you're dead, you're dead. And I buried the butterfly, and I said, God, if you're real, I know I'm going to unbury this butterfly and it's going to be in heaven. But I go, if Jehovah's real, it's going to be there. And so I buried it, and I put like a little stake, and then I counted down, and I unburied it, and it was gone. And so that in my head was like proof positive that,
Wow.
and that's why I have the butterflies on my wrist. But that was my proof positive that Jehovah was not a lie,
At 6 years
or
old.
Jehovah was a lie. Yeah, at 6 years old. Fast forward, I'm still in this home, but it's a very abusive home. My stepfather was emotionally, mentally, and sexually abusive. My
Mm.
mom was mentally and emotionally and physically abusive. And you would think, being in this new cult, or religion, as they call it, that they would want to clean up their lives and serve Jehovah and do things right. But this cult protects the predators and the people who do harm, and the victims have no voice, and they are the ones who get punished. So it's kind of like if a woman is raped, she's told it was her fault because of
Mm.
what she was wearing. If a woman is beaten by her husband, she is told it's because she hasn't done enough for him. She's not spiritually close to Jehovah. She needs to do better. Um, it's all the victim blaming and shaming the victim while holding up the predator. It even goes to such extremes as they have something called the two witness rule, which is, so I'm a child, right? And I'm going to give you an example of somebody I know, but I'm going to say myself. Um, Her uncle was raping her. She was 12. She went to the elders and said, hey, this is happening. And they said, where's your witnesses? You could be lying because you don't like your uncle. You probably
Wow.
came to us to tell us that because this and that. And she insisted no, that it was true. She was then, because she was the age of being baptized, she was then publicly told from the pulpit, don't talk to her anymore. She's disfellowshipped. She's not close enough to Jehovah. She's not relying on Jehovah. They never say why. But then the uncle was allowed to go free because he just said he was sorry. And they said, okay, we'll have some studies with you, and yeah. And that's a
Wow.
very common story. Very common story. So for me and um, my sister was sexually abused by my stepfather. She went and did that, told my mom. And I told my mom some things he'd been doing. To me, it was more exposing himself,
Hmm.
because I had a big mouth, and I would say things like, get out of my room, in my.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay.
I don't want to say my sister was an easy victim, but I was not an easy victim.
Right. Right.
So I was like, okay, go away from her. She causes too much trouble. And I said, yeah, that's what he does. Here, I'm like 9 or 10. And my mom went to the elders by herself and said, hey, what do? I need counsel. Well, she didn't have any witnesses. She didn't bring us. And so they told her to rely on Jehovah. She needed to be a better wife. She was obviously doing something wrong. She wasn't strong enough in Jehovah. And obviously her children, she wasn't teaching them and training them right. And so my stepfather, the pedophile, um, wife abuser, animal abuser, you name it, he did it, was just allowed to go scot free. So for me, that was like, this is a bunch of lies. Um, when
Did
I
you
was
learn though?
15,
Go ahead. I don't. Did you
no,
learn
no, go ahead,
from
ask
that
me.
that you couldn't trust adults or couldn't trust like did this create trust issues for you?
Um, no, it created in me a deep sadness that I
Mm.
couldn't have a mom who took care of her children.
Mm.
I needed that nurturing parent, and it wasn't there. It was
Yeah.
like, basically like, screw you. I'm on my, you guys are on your own. And I wanted that mom to be the one to take care of me and do what she needed to do,
Right.
get up and walk out of the house. But
Yeah.
she never did.
Mm.
And she still denies to this day that she's done anything wrong, which is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Um, I had some very trusted adults in my life who were not Jehovah's Witnesses. I had some very good teachers, and I did have my dad, and I was allowed to spend some time with him at my aunt's house. And so I had a couple of aunts who I trusted, but it was
Mm.
very short periods. We're talking like 3 days out of every 2 years. But
Wow.
that was enough for me
Yeah.
to hang on to that. Um, but when I was 15, I had a boyfriend who was not a Jehovah's Witness. And boyfriend, we walked the hallways together in school. Okay. We had classes together. We may have done some kissing out, behind the goalposts, but I never got to go on dates. I never got to go anywhere. I didn't get to go to the dance. I met him at the library, behind the stacks, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, so somebody snitched on me. And here in this case, there was no two witnesses weren't needed. Somebody just snitched and said, "Hey, I saw her with the boy." And then it was like, oh, right? You got to get her. My mom took me into the elders. It's 15, and 3 men questioned me, sexually explicit questions, wanting to know every detail of what I'd done with this boy. Like, did you have penetration? What? I was like, I don't even know what you're
Yeah.
talking about. Did
Right.
you let him touch this? Did you do this? They were things I was like, look, we just held hands in the hallway, dudes. I don't know why you're
Yeah.
asking me all these questions. And then in my head, I'm like, why do they care? What's the big deal? What about my stepfather? Did you ask him what he did?
Yeah.
No, you didn't. You never even talked to him. You just, so I was done. I was like, okay, I'm done with this. I got to get out somehow. So when I got home, my mom said to me, she goes, okay, so now you have to choose between Jehovah and that boy. And I was like, the boy, Mom? I'm choosing the boy. And she kind of
Right.
just went, her face like dropped. She got really pale and she's like, okay, well, she tried to give me a scripture to read. And I said, I'm not reading that. I made my decision. And she goes, well, you can't stay here because you're a bad influence on your younger sisters. And I'm thinking to myself, you have a man in this house who literally just kicked the cat across the room. And I'm the bad influence?
God. Yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, I was able to go and live with my dad. There was a gap in there because he was at sea. He was deployed. So that meant my dad had to get a new assignment where he wasn't going out to sea, right? So nobody talked to me for like 3 weeks. And then I moved to San Diego. I'm 15. Never lived with my dad, never spent more than 4 or 5 days with him. And I'm just plopped down into San Diego with no rules, you know.
Wow. Yeah. So you go from
It
like
was scary.
a rule for everything to complete freedom with no rules as a 15-year-old. Like, how do you even navigate that and
I
in a
know.
new environment? And yeah, go ahead.
I was like, I even had a TV in my room, which was like, I could watch TV at night, whatever
Yeah.
I want on this little TV.
Whatever I want on those 3 channels we had.
I know. It's like, move the antenna. Okay. I got
Yeah.
Benny Hill. I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a challenge for me emotionally and mentally because it was a new environment, yes. And I'm a happy, outgoing person. So I assimilated into the school and tried to make friends for the short time that I was there because it was the middle of my senior year of high school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so, okay. So now you're out of the cult. You're a young adult. What is like, at what point Like, how did the rest of this play out into you becoming who you are now? Because obviously everything was not fine in
No,
that
it was
situation.
not fine. It was not fine at all.
And then,
I
yeah,
buried it all and said, I'm fine. Let's go.
yeah,
I'm not looking back. This is my life now. I want to do this and this and this. I started junior college and found out, I am dyslexic and I have ADHD. And that's when I found out that school was really rough for me. I never noticed it before because I always tried to stay hidden at school. And I went
hmm
to 4 high schools, 3 junior highs, and 4 grade schools. So I never really knew how I never knew about education. It also wasn't a thing. I wasn't
hmm
supposed to be educated. So
right,
I skated by. So I didn't go to college because it was too much for me, and I didn't cope. I didn't know I could probably go and talk to a counselor, and like they
right.
could help me with some classes that would get me going. Um, and of course I buried everything from my past. So of course then I decided it was a good idea to get married at age 20.
Right, because you're looking for stability.
I was looking for stability, and I knew in my head, that's what it was drilled into my head. You needed a man to take care of you, somebody, to be the head of the household, and you do your thing. And
Yeah,
so
so
for me,
coming back to the values that you were raised with.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all for me, what I really wanted was a family, but I wanted a normal family. I wanted a
hmm
family that had holidays and did things together, like I wanted that, that Hallmark card family, right?
Yeah.
I wanted 3 boys. I have 3 boys, which I'm thankful for. I just chose the wrong person to have them with
Well,
because
again,
I
because
wasn't in
all
that
of your role
place.
models were such that how would you
Yeah.
choose differently?
I had one good role model, which was my dad, but I didn't have any time with him. So I didn't
Right.
get to assimilate that and
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I got married young and around like age 29. So I had 3 little kids. I had my kids by the time I was 26. Um, my ex-husband at the time started going to a church that has now been identified as a cult. It's the same one the Duggars went to, which if you've watched that
Yep. Yeah. I
that
haven't watched
expose
it, but I
on,
know.
okay. So he came home, decided one day we're not having Christmas. And I was like, no, 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 no.
We're not doing this again. I've
The
been
red
there.
flags, the red
Yeah.
flags started flying. And that actually sent me into a state of depression and anxiety so bad that I couldn't leave the house.
Mm.
I'd never dealt with my past. I just went fine forward, like, here I
Yeah.
go, I'm doing
Yeah.
it. So that was my point, my start of discovering that I needed to heal and I needed to figure it out and I needed to move forward. I needed to get rid of that baggage I was carrying around and hiding. I should say, I was hiding it under the bed.
Yeah.
And as I was healing, my ex-husband was not liking me because I was not the subservient wife. I had opinions now, even though they weren't bad. It's
Right.
just like, oh,
Yeah.
you have a voice? No, you can't say. I mean, he would say things to me like I would go to the grocery store and I would say, hey, the kids are in the house, 3 little boys under the age of 8, right? I'm going to the grocery store. And he would say, well, I'm not your babysitter.
Wow.
And so the point was, I was supposed to
No,
take all
you're
the kids with
right.
me to
You're
the
not the
grocery
babysitter. You're their damn father.
store. And that's what I said. And he didn't like that. So that was the beginning of the end
Yeah.
for that relationship. And I ended up moving back to California. At this time, we lived in Florida, and working a lot on myself. And that's where I started writing, and just started that healing process of understanding the past. But I still didn't deal with. I dealt with the. I have 2 traumas. I have the trauma of an abusive home,
Mm-hmm.
and I have I have religious trauma. I have both. I dealt with only the religious part. I didn't
Okay.
deal with my stepfather and my mom.
Yeah.
That took years. That took years until I finally figured it out.
And did that healing come from counseling, from journaling, from like what were the tools that you used to work through
So
and find
it's
healing?
actually a roundabout way because I'm a writer. My writing friends said I needed to write about this cult that I grew up in. And I was like, I write for kids. I don't want to write this story. The kids don't care. And they're like, yes, they do. So I started writing it and I wrote my first draft. And they're like, this is very angry. Is this really your mom? And I said, yeah, that's my mom. They go, is that really your stepfather? I go, yeah, that's really my stepfather. And now talking about it, it kind of makes me cringe. And they said, this is really, they started questioning me, like, have you had counseling for this? It's like, well, yeah. But then I started thinking about it. No, I had religious trauma. And then we started revising it again. And then I started getting to this dark place. And I should say my mom was living with me at the time, by the way.
Oh my gosh,
I was
I
taking
can't.
care of her.
Oof,
She had a room in my house. She didn't know I was writing this book. And I started to have days where all I was doing was crying. And I was having like flashbacks. And I called the therapist. And the first thing she said was, your mom has to leave the house. And I was like, okay. You asked me about, up front, what my belief system was. My belief system is as a Christian woman that it's my responsibility to help where I can with my parents.
Mm-hmm.
My father's passed away, but my mom needs help. So I have a room. And deep down too, I think I wanted her to still love me.
Yes. Right. Because you said earlier you were hoping to find a mom who was caring
never
and
has.
Yeah.
Yeah. She never was. She never is. But so at that point, I did start some journaling and I did go into some heavy duty PTSD therapy where we did some treatments. I forgot what it's called, but it's with the eyes and your
EMDR. Is that it?
And she actually took me back to some childhood memories that I had forgotten about, that brought up some memories that I was able to clear out and get rid of and understand and change my viewpoint, change my frame of mind. And so after that, I was in a much better place. I was like, okay, I get it. So I did finish writing the book.
Uh-huh.
So that's a good thing. And I don't have a relationship with my mom. I call her now and then or talk to her now and then, but that's it.
Is she still in the cult?
Talking to my siblings. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Most of my family still is.
Your siblings are too?
I have 2 siblings who are not.
Okay.
Yeah. So the rest of them are. And they all deny to this day that my stepfather was a pedophile, an abusive man.
Wow.
They're like, no, we're relying on Jehovah. Even my sister, who I know he did terrible, awful things to, still strong, going strong in the cult. Yeah.
That's that's the power of beliefs.
Yeah. And that's what I can't come to grips with. How can you have something happen to you like that and you're just told after all this time and you're told that it's your fault that you were molested and they let this man go? How can you, I don't know how my sister can come to grips with that in her head. So thank God. I guess that's my values, that were bred into me, my thinking system, that it never made sense to me.
Yeah.
And I always stick up for myself. I always stick up for the underdog. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So you're writing, that was your first book. And then do you still write children's books? Is it a process?
I do. This is actually my 4th book. That's my 4th book.
That's coming out soon.
No, The Truth is a Lie is my 4th book, and it came out in May of this year. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So the Truth is a Lie is the one that you were writing about the cult and all of that was
Yes.
the
So that
catharsis. Yeah. But it was your fourth
yeah,
book,
they
not your
call
first.
themselves
Got
the
it.
truth. Yeah, they call
Yeah.
themselves the truth. Yeah, it was a process because COVID happened, and my publishing career with my agent kind of came to a halt. And so after COVID, um, I ended up doing it as an independent published book instead
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
through my agent, which is what I had planned originally. Um, but yeah, it took a while. It took a
How
while.
how can somebody get their hands on that book?
Well, The Truth is a Lie is available on Amazon. It's available at Barnes and Noble online, Kindle and paperback. If you remember my name,
Yeah.
sallylotz.com, you can go to my website and there's a link there.
Okay.
And you can get an autographed version too if you want through my website.
Cool. And so this is a book for children?
So it's a young adult novel, so that's ages 15 and up.
Okay.
Um, but I have a lot of adults who've read it. I've had teachers who've read it, and it says that has made me very aware now of the children in my classroom, of what
Yeah.
they're going through, what they might be going through, and most people read it in one sitting. I've had people read it twice. So young adult, but I don't think I think if a parent wants to read it for their kid first to see if they think it's appropriate, that's fine. There is sexual abuse, emotional abuse in there, but I don't actually go into any of the acts themselves. It's
Mm-hmm.
talked about, but I didn't want to put that in there, that act of violence in there, because I didn't
Right.
want to make it about that.
Right. Yeah. And then what are you doing outside of writing? Are you, I mean, not that you have to be doing something. I didn't mean to say it like, what else are you doing? Like there's a lot. But I guess what
Well,
I'm asking is,
there's a lot.
are you out speaking and and like where are you helping other people in because you said that protecting the underdog or helping the underdog
Yeah,
is important to you. So
yeah,
is that part of what
yeah.
you're doing in your life now in addition to the writing?
Interesting question because all my books have like the underdog theme in them. I do share on TikTok. Um, I do talk about growing up in this cult and what it's like, so people can understand.
Mm-hmm.
I also do podcasts like this. I am a writing coach, book coach, and that's one of the things I like to do is help people to tell their story in a way that is unique to them
Mm-hmm.
and can get it out into the world if they need to. It doesn't have to be as dark as my story, but sometimes you just have that desire to tell it, and there's different ways you can tell it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And I want to point out here that, you're talking about trauma and the traumas that you've had in your
mhm.
life. And we've all had trauma. It's not a comparison
Yes.
game of like mine was worse
No.
than yours because every person
Correct.
as a human has trauma. And I can imagine that the writing about it and telling your story helps you process it.
Correct. Correct. And I wrote mine to help others. I didn't necessarily write it for myself. It
Mm-hmm.
happened to be helpful to myself,
Mm-hmm.
but I wrote it for others.
Yeah. Well, again, I can't imagine that the writing process that would or the book or the end result that's helping others would not also help you as the writer.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've had people reach out to me and they've said, "This is my life exactly when I was, in this cult."
Mm-hmm.
Or now I understand about, my uncle and my nephew and my niece why, they couldn't leave and why they never talked to me. Um, and then people will give me like I have a list of people who will tell me, my brother was in the cult and he committed suicide because he tried to leave and couldn't. I
Yeah.
have these long lists of people who are saying, "Hey, this really helped me understand," and so I appreciate that when people say that.
Yeah,
But you're right.
absolutely.
Everybody has trauma is trauma, and it's yours. And I don't mean to diminish
No,
anyone's
and I didn't get the feeling that you were
experience
doing
at
that.
all.
Yeah, I didn't get the feeling that you were
Yeah,
doing that. I just wanted to point out for listeners, like everybody has their thing. And so
Yeah.
you helping people to tell their story is
Yeah. Yeah. That's
important.
the thing. Somebody's told me, well, my story isn't as is like yours at all.
Right.
And I said, well, but you had trauma. You had something to overcome. Um, you needed support and it wasn't there, or whatever the story was. I said, it's just different. It's all, but it's still
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I mean, every good Hollywood movie has that story of the hero's journey, right? And
Yeah.
that the reason that resonates with people so much is because we're all on our own hero's journey.
Exactly. Exactly. And as a writer, my hero is on their journey. They get all kinds of stuff thrown at them as they're trying to climb that hill to safety. It's
Yeah.
just a continual barrage of things coming at them, and then my reader cheers them on because they succeed. They're like, oh, they made it to the next step, so, and that's life.
Yeah.
You're going to be going good, and then all of a sudden something's going to come at you, and it's like, how do you deal with it? How do you
Right.
handle it?
Yeah.
Is
Absolutely.
it fine?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Before we wrap up, you've already shared how people can get in touch with you, which leaves the one and only last question, which is what's your hype song?
I know what it is.
She's already dancing in her seat over here.
It's This Girl Is on Fire by Alicia Keys.
Good one.
Followed up closely by Love Shack by the B-52s. But This Girl Is on Fire. You'll be hearing me sing that.
I love that song. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Sally, on Fine is a 4-letter word.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Dave, for introducing us.
Yes, absolutely. And as always, the links to get in touch with you and to listen to your hype song will all be in the show notes.
Yay.
All right. Take care. We'll see you next time on Fine is a 4-letter word.